Good morning and welcome to Gunner Short Tech. Uh, in this episode, we're going to understand how machines speak, how machines understand everything in a very, very fundamental manner. Because most of us, when we talk of machine language, AI, etc., everything sounds Greek to us. So let's get this Greek into a language, into a simple method as to how we can understand it. And for this, I have my son Vijay, who's a software engineer, who's done his PhD, who's going to explain to us the fundamentals of how machines speak. And uh, Vijay, welcome.
Hi,
And
Dad.
how
How are you?
things? Oh, I'm fine. How things there?
Things are good. We are finally getting into the thick of 2024. So,
Yeah, a lot of excitement on AI and things like that. But yeah, you gave me some good ideas after the last couple of shows that we did, that we need to make people understand the basics, from a layman's point of view of how machines speak. So, what do you have in store for us? And the floor is all yours.
yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me back. Admittedly, it has been a little like a few weeks have gone by since we spoke about this stuff. And we've been chatting about AI, and you've been having other guests and been talking about AI. Everybody's been talking about AI for the past year and a half now. But I felt like it was important to start picking at some concrete ideas that AI rests on today, at least in the sphere of natural language processing, or NLP, as machine learning experts, AI experts like to call. uh, so I thought I would just try to introduce this in as brief a manner, as simple a manner as possible. So today we're going to talk about vectors, uh, and we're going to talk about how words are really represented for machine learning models. How does that sound?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
excellent.
fine.
So I will go ahead and share my screen because I have some slides. This is going to be
Yeah, go
more of
ahead.
a show and tell episode, and there will be some basic geometry and coordinate geometry related slides, but then we're going to look at some fancy pictures. So, and there's
Sure,
going to be a
fine.
live demonstration of something in between. Okay, so let me just go ahead and share my screen. uh, all right, and so let me know if you can see my screen. Dad?
Yeah, it's there on the screen.
Perfect. So uh, So we're going to talk about vectors. We're going to talk about how machines speak or how machines understand, but largely how machines or machine learning algorithms really encode text, words, sentences, right? But we'll start our discussion with just words. We'll just understand how words are encoded so that machines can reason about them. Machine learning algorithms can reason about them. So humans understand words like humid, blog, June, page, right? But machines don't, AI models don't understand any of these words. What AI models understand are numbers. They understand one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. They also are very good at understanding number sequences. So when you string or put together a sequence of numbers one after the other, uh, that's called a vector. That's a number sequence. It's called a vector. And machines and AI models specifically are really, really good at understanding these number sequences. They're good at understanding these vectors. In fact, today a lot of the revolution around AI algorithms and AI hardware and these GPUs that we are building, all of it rests on how good our algorithms and hardware are how good they are at manipulating these vectors, these number sequences. So you can think about uh, age-old techniques around matrix multiplication, matrix manipulation. If you've studied that stuff in schools and colleges, all of that stuff is getting applied today in real time. So all of machine learning, in summary, can be boiled down to how good the algorithm is, how efficient it is at manipulating these vectors or matrices, right? So, but what do we mean by vectors? Like, why are we calling these number sequences vectors, right? That's a good question. So, if you have studied physics or if you've studied coordinate geometry, we know that you can talk about vectors in terms of coordinate geometry, like on an XY plane or an XYZ Cartesian plane. So here is an example, right? So you have 3 points. Uh, I hope you can see this slide, but you have 3 points A, B, and C. A is at 1, 1, B is at 1, 2, and C is at a little further away, 2.5 and 2. Uh, and these can all, these are nothing but three different vector sequences, like three different number sequences. And so they are typically known in the world of mathematics or physics as vectors. Uh, so we can do interesting things with them. We can measure distance between them. This is a more traditional form of measuring distance. It's called Euclidean distance. We are just trying to see what is the difference between A and B, or B and C and A. And without getting into the mathematics, visually you can see that A and B are closer to each other. B and C are a little further away, but definitely the furthest away are A and C in terms of points. Like, that is the maximum distance you can see between these 3 points. But you can also represent them as vectors. What does that mean? So you can draw arrows going from the origin point, which is 0, 0, to A, B, and C. And interestingly, when you do that, you take a look at these angles that are getting formed. This angle represented by orange here and here in pink, that is the angle that is getting formed by these vectors between you know uh, you know a the A vector and C vector, and the A vector and B vector. The interesting thing is, the angle between A and C is smaller than the angle between A and B, right? The AB angle is actually much wider, and that is another way of representing, or you know encoding distance between points. So another way of thinking about it is, like, if you look at these distances, A and C appear to be further away than B and C are, or A and B are. But interestingly, directionally speaking, A and C are closer to each other. They're generally pointing in the same direction than what B is trying to do, right? So B is going off on a slight tangent than what A and C are pointing at. They're generally looking in the same direction. Does that give you some sense of intuition about how
Yeah,
distances can work?
yes, I understand. See, the relativity between these gets established by a
Yeah,
matter of the angle between them and the physical distance between them.
right.
So you when you manipulate this relativity, I suppose some kind of intelligence starts happening.
Exactly. So these are nothing but two different ways of representing distance between different points on a two-dimensional Cartesian plane. Right. One is you actually measure the tape distance, like the Euclidean distance, or you
Yeah,
measure what this is known as cosine distance. So you take the angle, you measure the angle between 2 points, like the angle that it forms with the origin, and then you take a cosine of that angle and you get a number between 0 and 1. And so that's another way
yeah,
of measuring cosine. 0 means that they're almost the same,
yeah.
1 means
Yeah,
they're
then
further apart, right? The
0 to 90 degrees.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the interesting thing now is, what do you do with this? So, like I said, if you go back to these representations of vectors, Vectors in machine learning are not just on a two-dimensional plane. They can be on a multi-dimensional plane. In fact, so you can have two dimensions. You can have x and y. You can have x, y, and z. So that's the three-dimensional world that we are living in. Or you can have a dimensional space that is 1,000, right? In a two-dimensional plane, all points a, b, and c will have only two values. In other words, it's a pair or string of two numbers. In a three-dimensional plane, you will have a all points will have three numbers associated.
Three numbers. Yeah.
In a thousand dimension plane, you'll have every point will have thousand numbers.
Yeah. Seen.
Okay. So what that does, interestingly enough, is now all of a sudden, instead of calling them A, B, and C, you can actually ascribe words. Or what we really end up doing is we can ascribe these vectors, these number sequences to words. So here again, in this toy example, I'm saying 2.52 is humid, 1 1 is water, and 1 2 is drink, right?
So you
But
converted A, B, C into water, drink, and humid.
yes, actual
Okay.
English words that you and I can
Yeah.
understand. And it can be in any
Yeah. Seen.
language.
Yeah.
But instead of thinking about them as just, two-dimensional vectors, think about them in terms of a thousand-dimension vector, right?
Okay.
When you go at that scale, all of a sudden, you can actually capture the similarities and the disparities between words in a much richer environment, right? You don't only need to place them on a two-dimensional scale. You can, and we will see how we can do that in a bit. But if you go beyond what is visually possible and start putting these words in a 100 dimension plane or a 500 dimension plane or a 1,000 dimension plane, all of a sudden you can figure out the subtle differences and the subtle similarities between these words. For instance, the word bank is a common example that is used. Uh, the word bank can mean a riverbank, or it can mean a place where you go put money,
Money. Yeah.
right? But the word bank so can have relationships between with a river or money. When and how those relationships are stronger or weaker depends on the context in which it is used. So if you have the larger the dimensionality in which you represent these words, the better you can start capturing that nuance. Like if you say bank
Yes.
in a sentence, what does it mean? Like, should I match it with sentences that are talking about bodies of water, or should
Water.
I match it with
Yeah.
sentences that are talking about money,
Get that.
right? And these multi-dimension spaces, like once you've created such multi-dimension spaces and actually given values or given vectors to each word, or sentences given vectors to sentences, you basically end up with what you call embeddings. And embeddings are what are a useful and important byproduct of a lot of machine learning algorithms when they are training. So in machine learning, you have a training phase and you have a actual deployment phase, right? So when the machine learning algorithm is training, where it is learning, where it is being fed information, and it is trying to learn uh, what bank means, what the word bank means in different contexts, uh, it is actually creating this multi-dimension space for all the words and sentences and phrases that it is coming across, and it ascribes these vectors to all the data that it comes through, that it goes over, and that output is called an embedding. So it's an embedding is a way by which you can take words and convert them to vectors, and they are byproducts
So
of
that
machine
means each
learning.
word will have a vector of y, and it is embedded as a vector. I
Yes,
mean, what
it is.
I get to understand is that each word is embedded as a vector, and that vector has to be in a context.
The vector has to be in a context, exactly. And when you put all of these vectors together, is when you start to see how the machine learning model, the ML algorithm, really
Starts working.
contextualizes and understands these words.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what we'll do is we will go to a visualization. Like we've been talking in abstract
Yeah.
terms. I apologize now if some viewers are not able to see this on their mobile phones. I really encourage you to go take a look at it on bigger screens. But I will shift to a interesting visual demonstration. So here is a interesting demonstration. Let me just stop this. Oh no. Okay, so these are about 10,000 different words, and they have vectors. They have vectors assigned to them. Their dimensionality is about 200. So each word is represented by a string of 200 numbers, right? And there are about 10,000 such numbers. So here, what you're seeing is you basically collapse that entire 200 dimensionality space on a simple, xy coordinate space here, just so that we can visually understand where each of these words are, you know uh, end up relative to each other. And when you do that and you put words that mean the same thing, or mean they have similar context next to each other, you end up with this ability to pull similar words together and push away words that don't mean the same thing further apart. So you end up with these clusters, right? So you have a deep blue cluster here and a deep blue cluster here. You have strings of clusters going on here, another deep blue cluster here. So we are able to get this representation of 10,000 words that are mapped to a dimension space of 200 dimensions, because we are now able to compare each word numerically, mathematically. We are able to measure what their distance is. So if I
Okay.
search for the word cricket and I clicked on it, I can see immediately, I can open the word cricket here. So let me just zoom in a little bit. And yeah, there you go. And when I click on cricket, get related words, words that might be related to cricket. So I get things like ball, I think get things like match, scores, played, batting, I get cricketer. I also get somewhat unrelated results. Those lists are also available here. I get things like Chelsea. Chelsea, we know, is a popular footballing a team in the United Kingdom. I get racing. So all manner of things.
So
So
that means the vector of cricket is now linked with the other vectors which pop up.
exactly. So let me
Okay.
just go through a few more examples that I have captured here for you. So this is a representation that we just saw visually. Cricket and cricketer, we have already seen some of these examples. The last time I ran this and I captured, when I opened cricket, it was also giving me things like guitarist or starring. And
Okay.
so now you get to see, because these words are represented as, numerical vectors, it all comes down to what numbers are actually representing these words. So the machine
Yes.
doesn't
Yes.
understand the concept of cricket or cricketer, it just understands the string of numbers. And to the
Yeah.
machine learning algorithm, it may or may not make sense. It is just trying to do, cosine distance or Euclidean distance, and giving you what it thinks is available in the embedding. Uh,
Same.
Here is another example that I drew up. When I searched for India, the words that came up were Japan, Turkey, China, Australia, Asia, South, province, Hindu. Uh, right, but interestingly, all of them were clustered next to each other. When I zoomed in a little bit, I got other words like Mumbai. I got even Karachi, a city from Pakistan, which is a neighboring country to India. I got Kerala, Bengal, Pradesh. Pradesh is a word that is used in a lot of states: Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh. I got Afghan, another neighboring country, Afghanistan. I also got Gandhi. So when I zoomed in on Gandhi, I got Nehru, Aurangzeb, Mughal, Delhi, Singh. So you can see how the the machine learning algorithm, after its training, is able to associate India with all of these words just by the virtue of having vectors or numerical strings that are close to one another based on cosine distance or Euclidean distance.
Right. So that means the whole story is how do you make these vectors relate to each other and train with each other so that you get some logic out of the whole story. So that
That
Gandhi doesn't give you Aurangzeb, but Gandhi gives you Nehru or probably freedom or things like that. So you have to train that vector of Gandhi to search for other vectors in the context in which you are talking of.
That's exactly right. And so it really comes down to when you're training, you want to train on the right sets of data. You want to train not on junk data to make sure that Gandhi lands closer to Nehru than it does to Aurangzeb.
Aurangzeb.
Because you and I know what the concepts are, the machine doesn't. The machine will do what it can with the data it has been trained on. So and I wanted to show these examples with these imperfections primarily to highlight both the amazingness with which sometimes it gets things right, but also the fragility involved in relying on just numerical strings when you're trying to capture so much nuance in the world.
So that means you have to build logic. If you don't build logic, the AI model is useless.
Yeah, that's why software engineering as a profession isn't going to go away anytime soon. I can't imagine AI replacing, like, I don't know whether you'll need software engineers, but software by itself, code by itself that is deterministic. By that, what I mean is when you give it an input, it gives out an output based on certain set procedures. That isn't going away, right? Let's take another example. When in the Apollo missions, for instance, uh, when those pilots were landing the lunar lander, right, on to the moon for the very first time, they had entire booklets. Like they didn't have they had an onboard computer, but also they had entire booklets of procedures, right? Those procedures are to be performed in those exact orders, that exact sequence as listed in the procedure booklet, manually by the pilot, manually by the astronauts. The onboard computer was never a substitute for those manual interventions in the manner that was prescribed to the astronauts. Similarly, AI, for all its amazingness, its ability to seemingly deal with a lot of nuance and ambiguity, is never going to replace that onboard computer that you now have not just on space flights but also in aircrafts. You're never going to
Everywhere.
get rid of that. Yeah,
So you need something on which AI has to work, and AI has to be trained like a little dog to do what you want it to do. Otherwise, it will do all the wrong things.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very interesting way of putting everything across.
Yeah.
And right, so what Vijay said today is that we need to understand how AI gets represented in your computer. How we think of AI and how that whole thing is reduced to a mathematical equation, and that mathematical stuff is then processed, reprocessed back to what you wanted it to do, and that has to be trained again to get logic out of the whole system. And even when you get the logic out of the system, you need a whole lot of software to get to that place. So this is the entire circle of AI. It's obviously a time consuming effort, and AI is as good as the effort you put in. So it's virtually like garbage in and garbage out, right? If your logic is not right, if your logic is correct and it is in, you get logic out. Otherwise, it's garbage in, garbage out. Uh, Anything more you want to say on this?
No, I wanted to keep this one very simple. It's a very basic
Yeah, fine.
concept. As long as you understand that and you understand the fragility and the simplicity of the approach, a lot of other things start to make sense about how AI works the way it works.
Right. That was quite an interesting and a simple kind of an explanation. Uh, Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
And till next time, take care, and we'll get on to the next subject next time. Bye.
take care. Bye.